Tucker Carlson and Ice Cube actually had a sit down, and I mean an in-person sit down. Ice Cube took Tucker Carlson through the hood. Like, really? So they had an interesting discussion here. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of people are not happy with Ice Cube for having this discussion with Tucker Carlson. I told you guys before, there are gatekeepers. There are some in the media space. There are some on social media. There are some within your community, my community, all of our communities. They want to tell you who you can talk to, how long you can talk to these people, who you can be in spaces with, who you can shake hands with. Gatekeepers. And I don't like a gate and a keep. We're going to start with this first clip here when they're actually driving through South Central LA. Now, if you want to see the full interview, you can only see it on Twitter. So just keep in mind, like, Tucker doesn't have like this a YouTube channel or anything like that. But I thought it was a really good discussion. This is episode 10, Stay in Your Lane, our drive through South Central LA with Ice Cube. I want to just play just a little bit from here because I can't play too much from this clip because of the copyright, because there's music in certain parts, but there's just one little part I want to play from here. And then I'm going to go to part 2 with Ice Cube in the studio. So let's go ahead and start with the drive through first. And I believe we're starting at this point in the clip where Ice Cube is explaining to Tucker Carlson that Democrats have not helped people in South Central LA, how the neighborhood still looks bad. The people have not been, uplifted out of poverty, so to speak. And I think this piece right here is important. Listen to this.
3 decades and billions of dollars later, it's still a tough place.
How do you think politicians in Los Angeles have done running the city?
It's pretty much the same people running it the same way. Politicians only really pay attention to the people that give them money. Everybody else is kind of an extra in their movie. We love you in the scene, but we can do the scene without you.
So that's really important. Politicians pay attention to the people that give them money. The rest of us, we're just extras in the movie. Something to think about. So Ice Cube really doesn't pay that much attention to that. Let me see how far I can go because I think we start.
Yeah, I do. Do you ever give money to politicians?
No.
Why?
I don't believe in politicians. Politicians have hidden agendas. They owe a lot of people a lot of favors. The more money you give them, the more you're listened to.
So you've never phoned?
Okay, so he's asking him if he ever gave money to politicians, and he said no. But listen to this piece.
For a politician?
I can't say that. I've had hope and, dreams that, this guy is going to be the guy.
What did you think of Obama when he got elected?
For the first time, I felt proud that America took that step.
Yep.
I felt that same way. At that point in time, I felt that same way. I was like, wow, I'm so proud of our country. Little did I know how much of a pawn, how much of a puppet Barack Obama would be. I think a lot of us learned from that moment.
I didn't think they would ever do that. And so that was a moment in time. But then, you look around, years go by, and not much change for people I know, people I care about.
We've had 6 major race riots on the president's watch. Race relations have plummeted to lows not seen since the Rodney King.
In Chicago, a toddler is now the latest victim of the city's deadly surge in gun violence.
But it didn't change with Bush. It didn't change with Clinton. It didn't change with other Bush, Reagan, Carter. So, at the end of the day, it's still the same results.
So you're describing a symbolic victory?
Yes.
All right, and let's go ahead and stop there, and we'll go to the next clip. Because what's really important when he talks about, it didn't change through any of those politicians is true. And this is why we say, like, no one person is going to save you. You can have someone who's there to represent the views and the policies that you care passionately about. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a movement that's actually behind it and that continues after the campaign, regardless if they win or not, this is where people fall back to sleep. And that's what happened with Bernie Sanders. Like, people thought Bernie was going to be the savior. People thought the squad was going to save them. And when these people disappoint you or they did not win, you had nothing to go back to, because the movement was just around a campaign when the movement should have been centered around worker rights as well, helping people who are poor, the housing issue that we have in this country. That should have never ended just because Bernie Sanders' campaign ended. And I think that's the difference between having someone who's already a politician who's in there and someone who was not. Bernie Sanders was already in Congress, in the Senate. He was already there. So Bernie knew, like, yeah, this don't work out. I just go back to being a senator. When you look at people like Cornel West, when you look at people like RFK Jr., they're not in there. Marianne Williamson is not in there. And though I may not agree with some of their, campaigns, the policies that they have, or some of the positions that they have, this is different. This is a different kind of time. But you have to have a movement, which means we have to feel comfortable enough continuing doing what we're doing during that campaign once that campaign ends. That's important. Now, this piece here, the second part of this interview, I think is a little bit more personal. So he starts off asking Ice Cube, why did you decide to do this interview? Because people are going to come after you. Listen to this.
So why would you be doing this of all interviews? I mean, you could do an interview with anyone. You're doing an interview with me. Obviously, you're going to take abuse for doing that. Like, why would you do that?
Because I think it's silly not to talk to people. I think whether we agree or not,
right?
That has nothing to do with it. It's like, this is what it's all about. Let's talk about it. Let's debate. And I've been shut out.
Wait, that sounds like right-wing extremism and whataboutism.
But I've been shut out. Some platforms will not have me on.
Why?
They don't like that I'm, an independent thinker. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, I'm an outsider. And so, I'm not.
Gatekeepers. I told you, especially in media, gatekeepers. Oh, don't bring him on. He doesn't have the same narrative that we have. We can't have people listening to the rhetoric coming out of his mouth.
I'm part of the club. So I have to go places for one, that I'm welcome, and where I can voice my opinion without somebody, saying I'm a bad person and that they never want to have me on their platform again.
What platforms have banned you?
I've been I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So
apparently The View was only their view. Apparently the only view that the View cast members want you to hear is just theirs. I've said this for a while about that show. I told you, like, the way that they would treat certain people that came on, the people who were candidates that wanted to do something for the people, they were really nasty to people like Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne. This was 2020. They were very nasty to people like Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson, Andrew Yang when he first came on. Then they started to switch towards, more favorable towards him later on. They were very nasty to Bernie Sanders when he came on. When Joe Biden came on, they were all smiles. They're not neutral. And the way they treat people is very different. But the fact that they wouldn't let Ice Cube come on, really? You see that? They don't like some of the views that he has.
or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producers. You know, I don't know if the producers was just copping out and using some of the hosts to not have me come on and explain myself, but
You'd be a good booking for them.
I've been on there before.
Yeah.
You know, it's just when I've became an independent thinker, when I've, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't follow their brand of politics, I guess.
But if you can't think for yourself, then you're not really free, are you?
No, you're not. You're not. But I've been excluded. I've been excluded on Oprah, you know.
On Oprah?
On Oprah, yeah, I've been excluded. Yeah, man.
I would think you'd be the person Oprah would want to promote. I mean, you grew up in South Central, you were successful at a young age, you have dignity, you say what you think. Like, I thought that was the goal.
Me too.
No.
You know, I don't know what it is, but, you know, several of my, you know, I had a movie called Barbershop, you know.
Yeah, I remember.
That I wasn't invited to participate with the cast. I produced a show called Black White, and it was a very controversial show. And once again, they had the whole cast on, but I wasn't invited. And so I don't know.
On Oprah's show.
Yeah, so I don't know what that's really.
But Oprah's.
Ice Cube don't know what it's about, but I know what it's about. And I'm just going to keep it real. Oprah likes to promote certain types of Black people. Oprah, she's very particular about Black guests that she did choose to come onto the show. And for you guys that don't know, it was her company. Harpo's her company. Okay, it's Oprah spelled backwards. But she was very particular about that. So just because Oprah was Black and you're Black doesn't mean that Oprah saw you as the right type of Black person to bring onto the Oprah Winfrey Show, because the majority of people that watched Oprah's show were not Black Americans. The majority of people that watched Oprah's show were white Americans. So she brought on Black people that she felt would be favorable to that audience. And that is why she didn't bring on Ice Cube. I mean, Ice Cube is pretty, he's pretty vocal, right? Now, some will say, well, she brought on Jay-Z. Jay-Z kind of changed over time. When she brought Jay-Z on, it's not like when he first started, when he first blew up. She brought Jay-Z on after he became a businessman and he started mingling in the same kind of spaces with the same kind of people that she mingled with. That's when she brought Jay-Z on. So just think about that for a second. She bougie. Just let's keep it real.
It's obviously a saintly, godlike figure who's revered by all decent people. Why would she exclude you?
I really don't know. You know, that's something that I would love to find out. But I can't tell you, you know, if there's a single thing that I've done or said to her.
Have you noticed that it is more controversial to criticize Oprah than to burn the American flag?
Really?
Seems that way. I've never heard anybody criticize Oprah. Do you think it's political or do you think it's deeper than that? I mean, you're not like a right winger.
Tucker, you're going to have to get out more often because there are people who criticize Oprah. There are people, a lot of people do criticize Oprah. Maybe not on mainstream media, but we'll have to get him to listen to some of the YouTube channels. There's a couple YouTube channels that focus on celebrity, like they talk about celebrity news and celebrity entertainment, and they just cover that. They don't get into the politics and stuff like that. And they have some things to say about Oprah. So.
No.
You don't even seem that political.
No, I'm not really. I'm pretty much, you know, just want to do right by the people, you know. So if that comes through political means, that comes through the private sector, wherever it comes, you know, I'm down to work with whoever's down to do something right for the people.
So I remember reading you say something along the lines of, I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump voter. You actually attacked Trump at one point, but you were willing to meet with Trump. Do you think that crossed a line?
I think some people didn't like that, but I think it's idiotic. You know, enemies meet.
Right.
You know, they talk. I'm pretty sure there's some communication between Russia and the Ukraine right now. Somebody's on the phone talking to somebody, trying to come up with a solution. So that's the only way we're gonna work this out. You know, I know when the talking stops, the fighting starts. You know, a lot of people, they, you know, think I'm a, you know, Republican. I'm a right winger. Just because I was willing to speak to the Trump administration, I mean, and I was willing to speak with the Biden administration as well, you know.
Yeah, but they left that part out. And that's another thing I noticed too. Like, even when he had that interview on CNN with Chris Cuomo, he said, I reached out to both. We reached out to both. You know, people would just leave that part out, that he reached out to the Biden administration and only country has become more and more polarized as I get older. It's just something that I've noticed. And yes, we do have like this two-party system in this country. I don't agree with it. I think we should have as many parties as possible. I think it's ridiculous that people have to be, you know, pigeonholed into these two parties. I think that's stupid. Expand your mind. Okay. But I have noticed, as time has gone on, since the very first time that I was old enough to vote for the president of the United States, I've watched this country become more and more polarized, especially in reference to, you know, red team, blue team. And meanwhile, the class war continues. Meanwhile, poor people are still poor. Meanwhile, people still have difficulty putting food on the table. Meanwhile, tuition continues to increase. And a lot of times these things are just, they're overlooked because people are so focused on which team they are a part of. And I believe that's on purpose. I really do. I believe the United States, based on what I've seen, you know, as I've grown up, I feel like the United States is a crumbling empire. We are not, you know, this great, powerful empire that we used to be back during the time when my parents talked about, like, you would have a company car if you worked for a company. Like, we're not that powerful empire that we used to be anymore. And it's crumbling. And I feel like this polarization between these two parties, I feel like it's on purpose to keep us divided so that we're not focusing on the economic issues in this country, and we're not focusing on the top 1% that are actually above all of us. If you think about it, they want our attention diverted.
Have you?
One guy in the administration, but it didn't go anywhere. You know, it was basically a, you know, take my temperature kind of call. We'll get to it, like, but you know, they never got to it or never planned to. Matter of fact, the guy left the administration. So, you know, after talking to him for a year or so, he was gone, and then, you know, we were left really with no one there.
For a whole year, those talks went on
To continue the conversations.
What do you think of Biden?
I don't think he's given the people who put him in exactly what they thought they were going to get from him.
But his most loyal voters, according to the polls anyway, are black voters, particularly black women. And those numbers don't seem to change. So no matter what happens or doesn't happen. So do you expect they ever will change?
Did people actually believe that they were going to get those things from Joe Biden, or were people more willing to vote for Joe Biden because they were so fearful of getting another 4 years of Donald Trump? I think that's the question that needs to be asked, because I know me personally, I didn't expect Biden to deliver. Some people are going around saying, look at all the things that he's done. Yeah, those people aren't poor. But I really didn't expect him to deliver. So for me, I didn't really have any disappointment. But I wonder about that. I wonder if those people actually really did expect him to do all these things that he said that he would do. Or if it was just more so, fear. Maybe they did not expect him to do those things, but they just didn't want Trump again. I think that'll be a very telling question come 2024.
Whether they become independents and not vote for anybody who's not bringing it. It's like people want your vote. They have to do something to earn it. If they don't earn it, why are you going down there and pulling that lever?
Because the other side hates you. That's the pitch they make. We may suck, but the other side hates you.
You suppose.
And who's doing the voting? Because see, this is the other thing. Again, you have to remember who usually goes to the polls to vote. It's usually people who are over the age of 60, right? It's usually people who are over the age. Now, yes, there have been moments where, Gen Z has come out with record numbers. There have been moments where, millennials have come out with record numbers. But for the most part, the majority of the voting population are people who already have Medicare. So running on something like Medicare for All, what Bernie Sanders did for those people, there's kind of like, I already got Medicare. And I know this because when we were organizing for the Marches for Medicare for All, and we were asking people if we could share the flyers with them, there was a couple people that told us, like, I already have Medicare. So you see what I mean? Like, those are the people, like, a lot of the things that Bernie was running on benefited younger people. And that's why I know one of the things he wanted to include was hearing aids. And I think, was it dental or vision? I think hearing. Anyway, I know he wanted to include hearing in another one, but most of his policies more so benefited people that were not eligible for Medicare. So that's why if you already have all those things, if you already got your pension, you did your time. I don't want to refer to work as doing your time, but if you already have your pension, you already got your Social Security, and you already have Medicare, then to you might just be voting just out of civic duty. Maybe you don't really need all those things to happen that those candidates are running on. This is something to think about.
It was a dance with the person you brought.
Yeah.
And the person that brought you to the dance, you guys are supposed to dance together. And if that doesn't happen, you got to go find another dancing partner before the night is up and the music stops.
What do you think of Kamala Harris?
I mean, obviously she's a great politician to be able to become the vice president of the country. I don't know how effective she is at her job.
I wouldn't call her a great politician. I would just say that she's rubbed elbows with the right people for long enough time, and she's been in the right spaces to get to where she is. Google Willie Brown. So I disagree with Ice Cube on that one. I don't think she's a great politician. She just met the right people at the right time and climbed up that ladder. Willie Brown.
What's your view of the police at this point?
It's the same, it really is, it's like looking at, like, what's your view of the military? Like, they're the military. They're always going to be the military. If I asked you this in 1946, you'd be like, they're the military. Yeah. So it's a fraternity. It's an organization that does things a certain way. And I think their philosophy sometimes is detrimental to the people they're serving, because I think cops have a win and make it home philosophy. Win whatever battles you have in the street, make it home at night. And that's actually the most important thing. And everything else, people's rights, doing things the right way, being totally fair and square all the time and not, being a little aggressive, all that comes second to win the encounter, make it home at night. And
you can do everything right and still lose your life. That's the thing. And, you know, he knows about that. You can do everything right and still lose your life.
you can't really fault somebody for thinking that way as a police officer, but that's the philosophy. So everything else comes second to that. So guy might not care if he violated your rights. He's gonna win this encounter. He's gonna make it home tonight. And that's all that matters. And sometimes I think that's what we see is an organization hell-bent on winning and not a fraternity or organization hell-bent on upholding the law and doing everything right or by the book, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah.
That part right there, what he just said about how they approach the situation versus how we may approach the situation. The fact that their main focus is that they are going to win this encounter. Let's think about this for a second. What Ice Cube is saying, they're going to win this encounter and they're going to make it home that night. Whether or not you make it home that night doesn't really count. That's something I think that we need to talk more about that. I think we need to have a longer discussion about that. I might have to do a panel about that. That they make sure they're putting their life first.
And it's just the nature of that fraternity.
Maybe of organizations.
Yeah, you know, it's they come with a philosophy, and you know, you can try to buck it if you want to, but more than likely they're gonna get you out the way and stay in formation.
Yep. That's deep. If there's anything to take away from this interview, please take away that part of the discussion. I'm not going to play the entire interview because we can't be here all night. Let's just keep it real. But I do want to show you, if you want to see the rest of the interview, if you go to Tucker Carlson's page, it's episode 11 and it's Ice Cube X Tucker. This X thing is weirding me out still. Ice Cube X Tucker, the studio interview. So we got to 9 minutes and 49 seconds. So if you're wondering where to pick up from. But that is very telling. Now, like I told you, he's already getting criticized for this. And here's an example. This is from Brittany. Ice Cube doing interviews with racist ass Tucker Carlson and driving him through the hood for what? For who? How embarrassing. These are just a few. This is just one of the comments. Just one. There's a whole bunch, and you couldn't even bring him to his family's home because Ice Cube's daddy wasn't going to have any of that. And some people fought back. Like Sibum said, nah, Tucker's cool. You're just being racist. Interview with him, cool. Riding him through the hood boggles my mind. Yeah. So as you can imagine, he's already getting a lot of clap back from people. But again, like we've talked about this before, right? The gatekeeping, people who tell you who you can and cannot talk to. And in reference to the people that have that criticism about Ice Cube bringing Tucker Carlson to his old neighborhood or even having this discussion with Tucker Carlson, how would they have felt about when Fred Hampton approached the Young Patriots? Because remember, what happened? Originally, he said, we'd like you to join forces to be a part of this coalition with the Black Panthers, Rainbow Coalition, but you cannot still fly the Confederate flag and you have to denounce racism. So how would those people have felt about Fred Hampton choosing to make that first step to talk to the Young Patriots? Something to think about.